Hello, everybody. Hello, thank you. So good afternoon, since it's 12. My name is Helene Ambiana. I'm the Startups and SMB Marketing Director here at Google Cloud. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be joining you here today to kick off our Startup Lounge. You might not know this, but for the very first time, we have a bespoke space and custom-built experience for startups here at Cloud Next. Thank you. You can expect superior networking, top-tier speakers, startups launching their products, and so much more during these 3 days with us. Early this year, we expanded our Google for Startup Cloud program with a bespoke AI startup program, but also a bespoke Web3 startup program. This was based on your feedback as we continue to ensure that the program is built to support the needs of startups who want to build and scale. So today, I'm delighted to make 3 new announcements as we continue to expand the program. The very first one is our Google for Startups Startup School AI. This is a 6 weeks of in-depth AI training delivered by our AI experts. It's launching in January 2024, but because we are with you today, we are opening registrations early. So you can start registering just clicking on this QR code. Second announcement is our Gen AI Live and Labs events. You might have heard about these events. We are building them and reshaping them to be focused exclusively on startups. These events are kicking off in Q4 in 3 cities, so Tel Aviv, Boston, and Oregon, just to kick off, and you expect many more going forward in 2024. And for the third announcement, this is our ebook, Startup Advice from VCs, 10 Lessons from the Trenches. I know it's a long title, but we really wanted to ensure that VCs that are taking part in our monthly VC AMA series can come together and build key tips for startups. And we collected those and put them in this ebook. Of course, it's free for all of you to download a copy from today and onwards. Now, there were lots of QR codes behind me. So let's have one QR code to rule them all. This is in our newsletter. So every month we have a startup newsletter. So just take this last QR code. You'll have access to all the announcements, all the ebook to download, and future announcements. And please just click and subscribe. Now, let's kick off the main of this event. So today I am thrilled to be joined by Amit Zavery, who is the VP and General Manager here at Google Cloud. Amit, please join me.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hello, everyone.
So, Amit, I did share your role at Google Cloud, but what I didn't tell the audience is more about your credentials. Yes, you are actually an ex-founder and an angel investor. I'm sure that our startups in the audience would love to hear more from you about your experience in the trenches with them.
Sure. Thanks for having me, and hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. It's a lunchtime and being here. That's nice to see. I hope you guys are having a good event so far. I think I've been involved with a lot of startups for, I would say, 15, 20 years. And have various, mostly seed investment directly from myself, but also in a different way in terms of acquisitions as well. So at my previous role, when I was at Oracle, we acquired close to 40, 50 companies. And there were various sizes. It started with companies which were very foundational, basic technology providers who we could use as an ability to build products around. Second kind of companies we looked at were companies who could kind of create a new categories for us, right? So finding areas where we could find technologies, we can build a lot of business around that with other things we might have at Oracle as well. And then public companies as well, right? So companies which have kind of scale, giving you an ability to kind of go into a lot of new businesses and bringing a lot of install base of customers, and we can create a larger business around that as well, right? So that's kind of the typical acquisition part of it. But from the startup investment perspective, it's always been about finding the key kind of technologies, but also the right founders and the team. So with seed investment, typically what I've seen is that it's very hard to predict what the product will eventually evolve to. So as many of you, if you are founders, you know that you start with a concept and it evolves, and hopefully you can pivot enough and fast enough to keep up with the requirements and whatever feedback you're getting from customers as well. So typically I look for companies who have great founding teams. A lot of them might have come from the network I have had for many years. You're working in the industry and be in the Bay Area. You find and meet so many good people who have great ideas, and they're looking for good start to get going. Right, so that's typically what I have seen. And then once you have a good team and good foundation, just kind of figuring out the market fit, giving it some particular amount of time, and then be realistic about the prospects. And many of them have not done well, but few of them have done quite well. And over time, they're able to kind of get the product right, they get the right kind of customer adoption, and find a great outcome for that. Right, so it varies a lot. I mean, it's a pretty big spectrum of capabilities out there that way.
This is so interesting, Amit. We were at the games, the Giant games yesterday. Amit is a big fan of baseball, by the way, and Giants won. So
yeah, I saw that, yes.
That was wonderful. So there are so many applications of the technology for startups, so many industries, areas. Can you talk more about, over your experience, what type of industries or specific applications that really interested you?
Yeah, I think I come from a very traditional enterprise software world, right? So those are never sexy, exciting, interesting to many people when you kind of go and pitch it. But when you start understanding the problem you're solving and making sure you find a niche, depending on what you're trying to do, right? You might be finding a niche in terms of like your feature over time, but really changing how that thing will be built. Or you're creating a new area category, but you don't know how that will evolve.
Yes.
But at least finding those segments inside the enterprise space. And enterprise space is huge. I mean, it's billions and billions of dollars of TAM. And each one has so many different subsegments. At least figuring out which areas. So like security, for example, has always been changing and evolving, right? I always love kind of hearing from founders who have kind of solving a next generational issues around security. And you might find things that are maybe single sign-on 20, 15 years ago, but now how are you doing federated logins, and how do you kind of connect different systems together? You're seeing things with Web3 in terms of how do you do identity. So again, solving similar problems with new technology is very, very critical because that security segment evolves very fast. Similarly, if you look at data, that's again a minefield of opportunities, right? So there's things you can do really badly, but if you find the right area where it could be a gem there, you can definitely be a good provider around a lot of the key foundational pieces, right? So data is another area which I find fascinating and opportunity. I think even if you look at now with Gen AI, you're solving similar problems, but in a new technology context. So that would be another important space. And then I think its ability to kind of create a very good foundational technology set which you can build applications on. Okay. If you can provide right kind of tools, you can provide right kind of developer experience, that could be another segment which a lot of customers eventually will pay for. So I think the key thing when I at least look at the companies or things we also buy, it's like, is it monetizable? Like a lot of good concepts, but if nobody's going to pay for it, doesn't really help. So having founders and teams who are thinking about how that will not just be adopted, but also you're going to be able to make money and have a longer term run with it. Just not building technology, using technology for technology's sake is important, I think.
Yes. So, Amit, we've talked so far about, some advice as a founder, as a VC. But as I've been unpeeling the onions, of your career, I also know that you have acquired and integrated over 50 companies at Oracle and Google. Yeah. So what are the factors that contribute to successful startup exits with acquisition?
Yeah, no, I think it's, we probably, when we look at companies, you look at many, and only few eventually make it to the acquisition phase. Yes. And typically, what you look for is a good cultural fit. And just buying a company and then having that becoming part of your organization could create a lot of problems if you don't have the right culture fit. So we try to find like-minded folks who are running that company and who will come on board and help us integrate and kind of evolve it, right? Technology fit is, of course, important, right? So making sure that it does provide very good, innovative capabilities, and it can be differentiated, and can really help the product you're going to integrate it with or create a new area, build it out very fast, right? That has always been an important part of it. And then in general, I think the price, of course, always important. We always want to make sure you're getting the best outcome from the investment perspective when you're acquiring a company, but then it's going to be monetizable and you're going to be able to provide the right kind of returns. And then, as I said, we look at when we were doing acquisitions, and we do that at Google as well. It's like either are you buying something to augment some areas where we have a tuck-in kind of requirements. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of these companies which really make a big difference, because if you have to build everything organically, it takes years. You might not hit the right mark, and it might be too late in terms of getting mind share out there, right? So finding companies who can really be good tuck-in makes it much easier, and if you have a good cultural fit, you can go very fast. And then if you look at companies who are going to be really creating a new segment, at Oracle, for example, we had done this whole security segment where we bought, we call it string of pearls. Small companies, but very, very differentiated, very good technology. But when you connect them all together, that created more than $1 billion of business. Individually, they might not have succeeded and build that big a business, but you connect and you find those 4 or 5 companies who are going to become a big foundation when you have no presence in that area, and then doing that. We're doing something similar now when we start doing things around how do you augment existing areas at Google. Like we bought Looker, for example, yes. Right, which was on top of BigQuery, and suddenly with BigQuery, Looker, and some of the data integration technologies we've acquired as well, we are now able to provide full end-to-end solution to our customers. So customers do appreciate that, because if you're not just providing end-to-end, but well-integrated experience, it's an important thing. So you have to be realistic when you buy companies, and when we integrate, I think the founders or the team you should bringing in has to understand that they have to fit in. And we find a lot of times with companies that, we want to run the way we used to run. And as long as that remains, it becomes very hard to integrate. Yes. You have to really change that mindset, and the teams have to be willing and able to kind of drive the next level of growth through the partnership.
If I can probe a bit more in what you just said, I'll call it connective tissues, yes? So in your experience, have you often effectively looked at the different companies you're working with and find, synergies and effectively introduce them to each other to build together?
Yeah, I think a lot of these things, when we find acquisitions or opportunity to acquire a company, they started with partnerships. I mean, it's not like this comes out of the blue and suddenly find a company we didn't know about. Either you're partnering with them, you're working with them in some form or shape. You might be also creating an ecosystem where you find how those combinations will make a difference to a customer. So again, it's all from the customer angle. What are the pieces you require to finish a full, proper offering which solves the broader problem, yes. Right? So no, I think the connecting partners together, and some parts you provide as Google, and some parts you provide through a partnership and ecosystem. And we're doing that a lot more nowadays. If you think about a lot of our things, your announcements you saw today, I don't know how many were here at the keynote, but other things you'll see over the next few days are broadly an ecosystem play, right? And because you can't acquire everything. And a lot of startups love this idea that they can remain independent, but they can get the leverage of a company like Google to scale. So because the biggest problem for many companies when we speak to is the scale part of it, right? They can get good technology, there are a lot of good engineers and good products you can build. You can get the first 5 wins of customers you will be very high touch, you will get them successful. Now scaling from that 5 to 150 customers to 200 customers is always tricky. And that's where I think the partnerships with companies who have a larger ecosystem and can provide that go-to-market capabilities and solutioning does matter. Right? So everything doesn't have to be an acquisition, doesn't have to be an exit through things. I mean, of course, everybody wants returns if you're going to invest in a company. But I think there's an opportunity nowadays which used to not exist probably 10, 15 years ago, where you can still be independent and doesn't have to be a huge company, but still be able to be a decent player in the ecosystem. Right? So you don't have to every time exit through an acquisition or an IPO. You can still be independent, and there's a lot of small, wonderful startups who've been able to do that for many years.
Yes. And this is one of the reasons why we are so excited to have you here today and to network at the lounge. We hope that you'll find, like-minded startups and potential partnerships will emerge from these connections. So, Amit, let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
So, Generative AI, generative AI, generative AI. So we heard from Sundar and TK this morning during the keynote. We have a startup audience in front of us. I'd love to have your point of view on how generative AI can be used by startups, not just AI startups, but all startups, regardless of their field, that can harness the power of Gen AI.
Yeah, no, I think Gen AI is, of course, top of mind for everyone. I think for the last many months, everybody's been talking about it, and for a real good reason. I heard from Sundar and Thomas about the innovation happening and how it makes a difference. So I think it's very similar to what happened with cloud. Right? If you look at 15 years ago, or whatever, 10, 15 years ago, people started building applications. They used to build on-prem application, move to cloud-based application. That was the big transition, and every new application started being built for the cloud. Right? And there were multiple kind of things. Right? People provided cloud technologies as the cloud foundations, like what Google is providing, or AWS and Azure and others. But there were a lot more application creators who were building applications for the cloud. Yes. Right? So when Siebel moved, for example, Siebel on-premise CRM and Salesforce kind of built the same thing exactly, but in the cloud. And they kind of pretty much took over that business and built out a whole CRM business. Similar things are happening now with Gen AI. I think Gen AI is going to be a foundational technology everybody's going to use. I don't think so there's going to be next generation application built without Gen AI as a foundational technology. There'll be, again, multiple kinds of providers. They're going to be foundational provider, infrastructure providers, like you have NVIDIA providing the chips, for example, or Google providing TPUs. We provide infrastructure to run those chips as well. And then there are foundational provider, LLM companies out there who are doing training the models and providing that as the building blocks, including Google, Anthropic, Cohere, name them. I mean, there are quite a few, but there's going to be few. I mean, there are going to be not thousands of them. It'll be like 10 to 15 because it's very expensive to do. But then you can take that, leverage that technology and use it in your application. And it's not a one foundation model is going to fit everybody's requirement. So you have a lot of choices. And you can use open source technologies, or you can use things which Google provides or other foundational companies, model providers provide, right? And build your application. So I would expect every application which is coming out now will use this capabilities. The question becomes is how easy it can become for you, how much time you need to spend on it. Just like initially the cloud adoption was a little trickier, I think the technologies got better and better, and now you can build an application without really thinking too much on the cloud. I think similar things will happen with Gen AI as well. We are starting to do a lot of that stuff. You saw some of the demos around Vertex AI, right? With set of APIs, or through the model garden, or through the console. You can auto-create a lot of the applications on top of it without having to write a lot of code. And you can get benefit of it into your application itself through the APIs. So I would expect, I think, more and more of those will happen over the next year or two. And it will become a capability everybody needs to know about, everybody needs to learn about. But I think the value will be that how do you use it to differentiate your product, right? And when we talk to a lot of our customers now who are building applications, they are thinking of a lot of innovative ways how this thing changes their application processes, how they change their interface, how they change what kind of information they provide to the customers, and how that could be a big difference maker versus their competition, right? So I think the innovation will come from people who have domain expertise. If you're doing medical stuff, you're doing things around security, or you're doing things around workflow, or other things, how can you use this thing to make a difference in there? And there's a lot of capabilities out there, and you can kind of go wild and you can learn everything, but might not be the best thing. Can you find the area which matters and then get into the depth of that? And then use providers like Google or others who has the foundation pieces, which you can reuse and kind of get learnings from, and then you can focus on your value add and your differentiation.
Thank you, Amit. So you've heard it here. Generative AI is here to stay. There are multiple applications. It's not this year's trend and we'll move on to another trend. It's definitely here to stay.
Now, I think if you look at the investment happening in this space, it's crazy, right? And many of you probably seeing that. And of course, there are a lot of fake AI companies as well, so you have to be a little careful. Just because .ai doesn't mean it is really going to change anything. But as long as you find the right mix in there, right, where there's a business value, customers find usefulness, and then you are doing some innovation around those technologies as well, right? I think that there's a whole customer service area which is changing drastically. You're seeing medical applications changing quite a lot. Education, same thing. So I think every industry is having a big moment now. And every customer I speak to, every enterprise customers, any industry, financial services, others, they're all starting to use this as a way to accelerate their customer relationship, but also differentiate their offerings. And everybody has so much data, a lot of this enterprise. They're finding now a lot more value of it, as long as they can figure out where the data is sometimes, which is always a pain for them. But if you can provide services to make it easier to use that information and build value add, that makes a huge difference.
Well, thank you.
Thanks,
Amit, you have been wonderful. Thank you for prioritizing startups. Thank you
all.
very
Good luck,
much.
everyone. Thank you.